today. Super excited. Briefly, I foreshadowed this on the last video at the end. Man, I got it. I spent a lot of time with it. It's incredible. The Jad Freer LUCE DI box. What an amazing piece of gear from a company that, this is actually my first piece of gear from Jad Freer, and I just couldn't be more impressed with it. I know for a fact that they knock everything out of the park, and they certainly did that with this. So, you know, at its core, it's a DI box. What this is doing is this is taking our bass, it's converting that high impedance signal to low impedance, take it to some recording, to a board or a recording interface or front of house if you're performing live. And it just, you know, it's giving a quality signal to whatever device it's going to, right? But then internally with it, it has a Carnhill transformer, and it has some tubes, and God, those tubes are escaping me. ECC 88/6299, I think. I have it on the screen over here. I can double check that that's actually right. Hopefully it was. Yeah, ECC 88/6922. I would love to tell you that I know exactly what tube that is and exactly what that does and all the ins and outs of it. Unfortunately, I don't. And you know what? I don't really care. It just sounds great. It adds saturation. It adds tube warmth. I think above all of that, it just makes any bass that you plug into it sound more musical. It adds harmonic content, meaning to me, all of the series of harmonics, a lot above the note that you play, it's not necessarily directly audible to the ear, become a little bit more present. And with that, it just becomes more musical. I always like to think of a good bass sound as some of the lower keys on a grand piano, where you hear that note plus all this other content kind of ringing around with it. And I have found that when bass sounds that I love have an element of that, obviously they don't sound like a piano, but they kind of evoke that, that visual stimuli in my mind of that. Just, again, a lot of content. And I think this pedal really, really does it. The form factor is amazing too. Super small. It's super well built. It's super nice. I don't want to go too heavy into the features because this video isn't about the features. There's other videos that they're going to tell you about the features. Runs on a 9-volt like power supply, 400 milliamps. So that's a lot of power supplies will run this. You have a ground lift, you have a pad. So if you're running an active bass into it, can handle that. XLR outs on the top. You have a 1/4 inch out on the side. A really cool feature with this, little hidden trick, is it is also a summing box. So if you have like two basses, or if you had a bass and a synth, drum machine and a bass and guitar, whatever, it's going to take another signal and sum those together, run it through that transformer, run it through that tube, and you're going to get the character of this box on kind of whatever you plug into it. It's really, really incredible. I just can't say enough good things about it, and how much. It's rare that a clean pedal, or clean, I should say, not some wild effects pedal. It's rare that they can be super inspiring, and this is definitely that. Cool. What's also inspiring are the kind of other two pedals that I put with that, and these two have kind of been in the arsenal. So I'll briefly spend a little bit of time on it, but this will also explain what I'm going to kind of show you sound examples of. The 29 Pedals EUNA. This is essentially a buffer pedal, and I have another video on that on the channel. But I love what this does tonally. It has a little bit of tone sculpting that occurs with it. You can see these kind of dip switches on it, right? And it's a H, B, and L. The L is low, the B is bright, the H is harmonics. I like engaging the low and the harmonics. The low obviously just gives you a little bit of bump in the low end, and it's super musical as well. The bright adds top end to it, like a bump in the top end. I don't love that. On bass, I don't love that. I've used it on guitar, and I do like that. I do like that. Or if I'm doing like the octave up stuff on bass, I'll engage that occasionally. And then the H is harmonics, and that's kind of like air above your fundamental note. I talked about, you know, harmonic content just a second ago, and this kind of adds a bump in that. So now we're starting to like stack these small percentages of tone sculpting in different waves through the signal. And I really like doing that. And then after the EUNA, you know, the pedal that I was using as a DI and will continue to use as a DI, but really what I'm using now is kind of a harder EQ sculpt. In the middle of this is the trusty old JHS Colour Box. Absolutely love this pedal. Love the versatility of this pedal. You can do anything you want with it. It's basically a Neve 1073 in a box here. You can run microphones into it, whatever. You can use it as a cool overdrive pedal. I use it generally as I use it as a clean pedal, but I do like that it can add a little bit of saturation from like transformer saturation on this, which is different than tube saturation. I find those things feel different, almost more so than they sound different, the way that it affects how I play. But I don't use this really as anything other than a clean pedal, really. I don't adjust the EQ all that much on it. Occasionally I'll mess with the master and the pre-volume on it, but I generally will leave the EQ section as is. So I want to show you the bass through my Apollo X4, so direct into the interface, and then through the Luce, and then through the EUNA and the Luce, and then the EUNA, the Colour Box, and the Luce. And we're going to go through a few different basses. We're going to use an Empire 58 with flats. We're going to use an Empire 58 with rounds. We're going to do the Castedosa Conchers on both pickups wide open, played with a pick. Kind of do the palm muting thing with that. And then an Elrick 6-string. So we're going like two P basses, the Castedosa, which is a hot bass, almost as hot as an active bass, even though it's not active, and then an Elrick, which is a very active bass, Bartolini jazz bass pickups in it, Bartolini preamp in it. And you know, you will hear in every step, all the basses sound great and the Apollo sounds great. That's a solid preamp in that. Every time I add one of these pedals into the mix, starting with the Luce, I just think things get better and better and better. The Luce on its own is incredible. If you only had one, I'd probably say get that, because it's such a great DI box that doesn't wholly change the sound of your bass at all, but it just makes it more musical. It makes it more fun. And then the EUNA and the Colour Box, you'll hear when I add those on, you'll hear where the EUNA just adds a little bit of a curve to it, so to speak, tonally. And then you hear where the JHS really starts to bring in a sound. That's where I can dial in the sound that I prefer, the EQ sweep and the EQ curve that I prefer in a more seismic way than kind of what the EUNA does. But I will say, I having the EUNA situated like I do, emphasizing the upper harmonics and the lows and kind of not touching the highs, I have the JHS set in a very similar fashion where I'm boosting some lows. I'm leaving the middle kind of at center point, and I'm cutting some treble. So I'm applying kind of the same EQ sweep, but in like that second stage. I tend to think of this kind of gain staging with EQ curves the same way I would with like plugins when I'm working in Logic or something. Is I'm adding these small percentages of gains into it. But then you got those two pedals hitting the sweetness of that Luce and the musicality of that Luce, and I just think it's incredible. So, all right, enough talking. Let's listen to it. I mean, you really hear each step, these small improvements in the tone, small improvements in, I'll go back to this word, the musicality of it. The Luce by itself just adds that richness, and that tube warmth is just there and very, very present with it. But then as we start driving that a little harder with the EUNA, and then even more so with the JHS, all of those musical elements that transformer and tube, and keep in mind the Colour Box has a transformer in it too. The musicality and the harmonic content or harmonic richness just increases every step of the way. So I couldn't be happier with how these are working right now. And it's been an absolute joy to experiment with these pedals. I've always loved having the EUNA and the Colour Box have been a staple now for maybe about a year or so. The combination of the two at different points in my signal chain too. I've moved that EUNA, the Colour Box has always been at the end, but I've actually moved that EUNA through the effects chain. So we'll see kind of where it all ends up. Maybe I'll post a video of an updated pedal board as I start to incorporate these things. But you just hear how it makes every single bass, and they're amazing basses. Empire 58s, Castedosa, Elrick, super like world-class basses. It never hides the sound of the bass, but it just makes it, I think, better. It makes already musical basses sound more musical. And to me, that always translates just to being a little bit more fun to play, a little bit more inspiring. I love when pedals that are essentially clean. I've called them this before, and I mean it and don't mean it. Boring pedals, kind of utility pedals, utilitarian pedals. When those can be inspiring, I think that's a massive, massive win for the player. So if any questions at all, hit me up in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer anything that I can for you. If you don't subscribe to the channel, please do so. We greatly appreciate that. The website, reflectionconcept.com. If you want to hear any of my music, all the evil streaming services I've given in, I'm on all of them. Just search my name, Anthony Licora. Again, thanks for watching the video. Please subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time. Appreciate it. Bye.